So, hello everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of ClueCon Weekly. This week, joining us is Dimo Dimov, R&D engineer, and all around knower of things. And thank you so much for joining us today, Dimo.
Hello.
Would you like to start by giving us a quick introduction about yourself, please?
Yes. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And it may sound quite boring to the audience, so I'll try to be as short as possible. I'm an R&D software engineer with nearly 25 years of total experience, and most of my experience comes from automotive electronics. Also, the other technical details include C and C++, embedded systems, software quality tests, and automation. I won't go in deeper details because this might be very specific.
Oh well, there's always something interesting there, though. So, what company do you currently work with, or what are your main focuses these days?
Well, I was kind of lucky because I had the chance to directly experience 10 to 15 different companies as employers or as customers, and sometimes as customers of my employers. And so most of these were people in the automotive industry, which is a regulated industry. And this is kind of specific business. It has its regulations, it has its concerns, and at the same time it has to produce cars. The end product of automotive industry is the car, and the modern car has to be with sufficiently high quality, and at the same time it has to possess a lot of features to be competitive, and it has to be reasonably cheap for the end user.
Oh, I see.
From my standpoint, these things are quite interesting indeed, as you said, and even the deepest technical details are quite nice, not just because they are interesting by itself, but also they set us apart from the competition. They give an individual developer or an R&D engineer, they give some room for improvement, room for better expressing yourself, and even for some creativity.
Nice. Yeah. So, we don't often have people on the show who are from, let's say, the automotive industry or in general industries who are very real time based. So, what would you say are the most interesting aspects of developing software for the automotive industry compared, say, for, I don't know, developing a voice over IP application or something that's less real time?
There are three major problems from my standpoint as an individual and R&D engineer. There are three major problems in the software industry in general. The first one is the lack of people, the manpower. These are the software developers, the programmers, DevOps, etc. The second one, let's say, is the vast amount of information and options and the vast number of options available. And probably the third one would be, I could define the third one as software quality gap. But that's just a working title for it. And of course, there might be various companies and individuals that would argue to this particular name, and I would easily agree with this as well. It's just a matter of definition sometimes. And what I find interesting in the software industry is that for so many years, since I graduated back in 1998, there was there were two separate conversational points. One was, well, this is one aspect of it. Of course, if you are a startup and if you want to develop a new product, and if you come across some safety requirements, this will make your life harder because you need to find more funding for this kind of activities. But overall, it's having more options is always better.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So going back to development, which is really, it's again being different than usual. It's really interesting. What is the process like? Can you give us an example of a system you worked on and people could find in a car, and how was that developed?
Yes. In many cases, you would hear about the so-called V cycle, where we have every activity on the development side of the V-shaped cycle matched by something that controls the output of that development step on the other side of the V-shaped timeline. So for every step, like let's say for example, design. For the design, we will have for the overall design, we will have tests on the that are for the aggregated product for the car in the actual situation, etc. For more detailed design, we will have like, for example, modules or particular software functionality. We will have some tests in isolation. We will have unit tests, for example. For the very detailed low-level software modules, we will have unit tests. And this detailed and step-by-step design makes at the same time predictable process.
Oh yeah.
The point is also that even with slightly bigger budgets for automotive industry compared to, let's say, consumer electronics, even in those cases, these budgets are not they are not endless. They are still limited, and even in those slightly bigger budgets, they still have to fit with better quality, satisfying higher level of requirements, and possibly having some more spending on different kind of research, etc. Maybe third-party intellectual property and things like that, license fees, etc. So still, it will be more expensive than other industries, non-regulated, for example. And at the same time, it has to be reasonably cheap, so the car is not too much expensive for the end user, for the consumer, for the final customer, for the one who is paying the money. And it's also the very in the essence, it's not too much creativity apart from initial design idea and probably some visual appeal of certain products. For example, let's say headlights. Once they are designed and they have some niceness into it, some visual appeal for the end user, and it's just that most of the effort, most of the spending goes for developing and securing this quality.
Oh, yeah.
Developing the product, securing the quality, and making sure that you ship from your factory repeatable, reliable, and at the same time mass quantity of this product. Whilst on the other pole, we may have industries that have more creativity and involved, and this, of course, drains a lot of talent to the other industries because they have more degrees of freedom to what is allowed, to what you could do there, and naturally people would prefer to work jobs where more creativity is involved.
Oh, yes, yeah.
That's a kind of trade-off.
Yeah, I guess well, that's again, something that could be interesting just to frame things into perspective. Could you give us an example of a concrete system you have developed or you've worked on that people might find in their cars? Maybe you can tell us which car, but maybe you can at least tell us which system.
Thank you for this. Sorry. One example is I worked for long years for one particular tier 1 supplier, and we were making researching and developing multi-camera systems.
Oh.
So these were sold to and embedded into European cars, European brands, but also they got to US market as well. Unfortunately, I can't remember which particular US brand you could find these systems, but
so this will be the camera for when you go in reverse, the camera, or the rear camera.
No, more complicated than that.
Oh.
It's actually the bird view of the whole car with its immediate surroundings.
Yeah.
And these were quite typical for the company I was working for, and at that time. And actually, they at the end of the period I was working for them, they became also inherent part of autonomous driving car, because the same imagery, the same real-time video used for presenting it and using it for slow speed maneuvering, automatic maneuvering, like finding a parking spot, and the same time showing it to the driver. So these were also became part of autonomous driving system. So the very same real-time video streams are used as part of the input for autonomous driving. But
wow.
it's just becoming a smaller part of much bigger picture. Although at the time I was working there, and taking into account the size of the team, so many R&D engineers involved, I thought it's already a big deal. But actually, it turned out it grew much bigger deal, because later the same real-time video stream had to be used with maybe with some different considerations into account, all together with other sensors like lidar, radar, and sonar sensors, all together into one big self-driving autonomous car.
So yeah, I think so. My father has a car that has a similar system. So what you're referring to is, for example, this car tells you which speed limit you are in the area by looking at the signs. So when you get a sign that says 130, it means the speed limit for the area is 130. So that's the start.
One of the products our company was working on but it was not the major product for the company, and it was not developed particularly at our location. What I was involved at that time was video signal processing of these 4 or 5 different cameras in different places
Car?
located in different parts of the car that were making a combined real-time video to be presented to the driver.
Oh wow!
One example was the bird view picture of the car. The car itself was drawn because you don't have a camera out there in the sky.
Outside, yeah.
So it's just drone, but the rest of it, the immediate environment was actually this processed video from 4 or 5 different cameras.
That's super. I mean,
it was quite interesting indeed.
So, question for you, just flat out, because we're curious. How far are we from self-driving cars, in your opinion? Is it still a long way, or can it be done? Because it feels like everybody in the audience wants to know, right? You're an expert, so we're all technology enthusiasts. So I'm very curious.
We see, for example, that in San Francisco we already have self-driving cars. But if you ask me, for my honest opinion, would I buy a self-driving car that I was part of the R&D development team? A part of R&D team developing such a car? I would say that I would not buy such a car the first 5 years. In the first 5 years, after the software is formally released. This is my opinion.
Right now we need to wait for 2 or 3 more years.
It may sound a little bit radical, but it's actually just a matter of wording and definition. When a software for self-driving car is actually released, it's probably safe. It's a complicated matter involving several different suppliers, etc. And it's actually a lot of safety measures, I would guess, would be taken at the point of release. The reason I'm personally refraining from buying such car, provided that money is not a concern. Probably it would be very expensive car because it's high-end, etc. Maybe it will be not expensive at all. But anyway, I am ignoring the cost, the price concern, the price for me as an end user. But I'm just looking into the maturity of the processes and best practices in the industry, and only from that standpoint, I would rather prefer that these practices and processes in the industry mature a little bit more, I would hypothetically, I would prefer that the car manufacturers, the OEMs and tier one suppliers do not feel under pressure to release the car. Because for me as an individual, the competition between car manufacturers is just nothing. I'm not concerned about these car manufacturers would be concerned themselves, but for the individual it doesn't matter. For the individual,
Yeah.
the safety is
It's
the
more
major.
important.
And even if I'm confident in what I am releasing as software, probably it will be a very small part of it, as it was in the past when I was involved in this. And I actually, it's such a small part that I can test it in isolation. I can get confidence on my bit of it.
Yeah, but then all of it is different.
for the whole of the vehicle and for the whole of the industry as a set of good practices and processes it's a different story, and I would prefer to let it mature before I personally decide to buy it.
That's a great take. Well, Dimo, we're closing into the end of the episode, so I think we went through a lot of interesting topics, and people really want to learn about this kind of thing. I mean, self-driving cars are not very far away, so it's important to have an opinion from an expert. So, well, again, thank you very much for joining us today, Dimo. And we had a little bit of a technical difficulty, but everything went smoothly. And again, thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you as well for this opportunity.
And for the rest of the audience, I'll see you next week. Goodbye.